Hello, Lisa. Hi. Nice to see you again. I'm so happy to have you here for our 11th Get Mindful talk.
Yeah.
Okay. And what we decided as topic for today is to speak about our inner blockages. So what is holding us back from just following our bliss? Because last week we talked a lot about also our inner calling, and that there's this really good quote, follow your bliss, which sounds so easy. Oh, it would be a wonderful life. Just always go where you where the bliss is, where you have joy. But it wouldn't be too easy if it's just like this. So we all know it's life is different to this. Also, it's still a good guidance, follow your bliss. But today we want to speak about this. What is it? What is holding us back? Why is it sometimes or often so difficult to just follow the bliss? So yeah, let us start with what is this in us which is holding us back, because I think there it starts that it's so difficult to name it for each person.
Yeah, it really is. I think what I've noticed in myself and with many people that I work with is that we just have such a fixed set of expectations. And these expectations, of course, are part of our conditioning, the part of the stuff that we learn, the stuff we've taken with from our parents and from our school systems and society in general. So we have all these expectations of what life should be.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so caught in that, in these pictures of what should be, and some sense of, wanting to fulfill the expectations of what we believe society or our family, our partners, what they put upon us. And I think we get so caught into that structure of felt responsibility and fixated expectations, then it's very hard for us to just kind of let go and move with the flow, kind of go where our fate would take us, as it were, to go for that calling, to follow our bliss. And it feels so decadent, just to do what you want to do. And you feel like, I do that if everybody just does what they want to do. To this world. And I'm guessing we'd be happy. It's hard to say. I think most people, their bliss is just really to be happy and to do the things where their heart is. So, but it's hard because I think expectations are, and our fear of, you spoke about this a while ago, our fear of abilities, our fear of not being good enough, and maybe our fear of not meeting expectations. Again, we I think that's where a lot of our inner blockages, or that inner blockade comes from, is we're just afraid to step out of the comfort zone and leave what we've always kind of been told, or what we've understood to be what we should do and how things should be. And that it's hard. It's the easiest thing in the world and the hardest to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Just follow your heart.
Yeah. And so when we go to the point that it's based on our expectation that we are somehow not stuck, but somehow in a kind of cage that makes us difficult to step outside and follow our bliss. Even if maybe the idea, like what the bliss would be, is not like super special. It's like a idea which is close by, like super special, I would say. If you are I don't know, if you have your job and your family, etc., and you want to travel for a year, like this is something which is maybe more difficult to arrange than I don't know, start with a dancing class, which could also fulfill your bliss. Just to explain what I mean, was super difficult. But also there, we see already that it's all about different options which we have in mind and making it possible, etc. And but like how can we find out for ourselves like what's the expectation which is stopping me, or what is it what is holding me back? Because and we had this already in another talk, it's not like always that easy. My parents are like this, so I see this in myself, so I know it. It's more subtle often, like it's somehow the society, or maybe the kind of people where you are living, that even so when you're moving to another place, that then it feels differently, because also every regional culture has this, or the special expectations. So maybe first of all, is it important to find out where the expectations come from? But what really would be, in my opinion, important is like, which are the expectations I'm trying to fulfill?
I don't know, I think a lot of it is fear of failure. You're talking about class, and we tend not to start something because we're afraid of not being good enough. And I think that's generally, if I can just, put it into one pot, that's where a lot of it comes from, is this innate fear that we seem to have of not being good enough, and being afraid to take that step, afraid of even of being good enough, afraid of being able to do it, because if I really do it well, what happens then? How do I deal with it then? And so we're always projecting into the future what's going to happen then, what happens. And that makes it real hard, because we have this mental habit of projecting into the future, which I'm sure we'll talk about again and again and again. And that seems to be really at the root of most of our unhappiness, is the inability to just be in this present moment without thinking about, what could the future bring.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's important that we really understand where the expectations come from. I don't, we love to go into this analysis of, who screwed me up? Was it my parents? Was it society? Did I do it to myself? What singular incident is it that happened, or event that gave me this kind of conditioning? And it's kind of fun perhaps to think about it over a glass of wine, but it's not really that important. Sometimes yes, I don't want to say it's never important. There are incidents that, key events we want to understand better, but for the most part, it's like just realizing that you're terrified, and then learning how to be in that, terrified kind of condition and do it anyway. To learn how to live with that feeling of not being good enough, or learning how to live with the feeling of fear and doing all that stuff anyway. I think that's the real art, and that's what most. And then once in a while, we can go through some of these key events and try to figure out what happened back then, so that we can understand it a little better. But if we had to go back and remember and analyze every event that ever conditioned us, we'd never get done. We'd never get finished. There's just so much back there, and it's just, most of it is just forget it.
And as interesting as the analysis work would be, it also takes us back in the past, and therefore we miss again the present moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I tend to take people out of this analysis, and I don't mean to do it, general and say always, we always, every once in a while it's helpful, so that we sit down and think about some key events and really understand what happened, and takes the edge off of it. And for the most part, it's not really, it's not relevant. It's in the past, as you said. It's not now. It doesn't have to affect us anymore if we don't want it to. I don't have to understand really what happened. There are some traumatic events. Again, if it's, that's a real trauma. To work through that with a professional, with somebody trained to deal with past past traumatic events so that you can understand that. But for the most part, let it go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then when we say it isn't even that important as we might think to analysis where it's coming from, the expectation, etc. What's about that we I would say we tend to give a certain valuation to like events in the past and
Oh, yeah. Oh,
which
yeah.
are still influencing us now,
Yeah.
and then this is worthwhile going back to see, okay, this happened to me, but it's kind of like neutral, and we talked about this already once, that in itself it's all neutral, and then we evaluate it, and then we try to see it from another point of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And we tend to over-evaluate everything or overvalue everything that happened in the past. It's going to happen again. We blindly predict all that past into the future. And that's not helpful. And it's generally not an accurate way to see the future either. And then we have this terrible confirmation bias. And that's sort of a phenomenon where once we've made a decision that something is the way it is. For example, I've made a decision that, I'm just going to say something ridiculous here, that all men with long black beards are bad because I have a memory of somebody in my family who, a gentleman who had a long black beard who was mean to me, and I've decided that all men with long black beards are dangerous. And of course, I will always only notice the gentlemen with long black beards who fit into that category, who are also I will only notice the things they do that are mean to me, because I'll pull it right through that confirmation bias, because we tend to want to confirm our beliefs and not to disprove them. And so we see the things that we think fit to our thought patterns, to our belief patterns, and that's not very helpful, in particular with limiting.
So when we say we tend to this, that we want to confirm our beliefs, that's exactly where we then end up in these loops of fear of not being good enough or failure, etc. So what we can do, like here and now, is to be like open to failure, like to, okay, just give it a try, and even if it's not perfect, like even if it's not good enough or not as good as you think, just tell yourself it will be good enough, and then like experience what happened, because I think this is another part. What we tend to do is that we think, oh God, it would be terrible if it's not good enough, but then it turns out, what really should happen.
Yeah, well, I think we tend to run away a lot from our emotions. This fear of failure, that feeling of failure is so frightening for us, because we have all these stories that we tell ourselves when that physical sensation comes up that we call failure or not being good enough. So I think a lot of what's helpful for us is to kind of make friends with those uncomfortable emotions, so that we increase our tolerance for uncomfortable emotions, that we just increase our ability to feel the uncomfortable emotion, like the feeling of failure, which we're talking about specifically here, without telling ourselves all those terrible stories that tend to be connected to that physical manifestation, and just feel that feeling and then go on, move on, remain open for constructive feedback, because I may have to hone my skill. I probably will. If I'm going into a dancing class for the first time, for example, I'm not going to be the next Fred Astaire. It takes a while for me to get good at something, and in order to improve, I need to be able to process constructive feedback. But if I'm all emotionally involved in the fear of failure, or oh my God, I did something wrong, then we don't have a positive learning cycle. That's every learning cycle is a form of conditioning, and in order to have a positive learning cycle, we need to remain open. And in order to remain open to accepting and working with, in particular, constructive feedback, we need to, it's helpful to increase our tolerance to uncomfortable emotions, like the emotion that might come up when I did something wrong. Oh my God, I did something wrong.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is that when we are like too much caught in our feelings, and especially the uncomfortable emotions, that we are not open to listen to the feedback we get, and so we can't start the learning process. Yeah.
We tend to, getting caught in our feelings is kind of right. We're more caught in the stories that we tell ourselves about the feelings. We're not really caught in the feeling itself. If I'm talking about a physical sensation, we rarely really allow that physical sensation, and we get all caught up in the analysis or in the
Yeah.
we tell ourselves. And the physical sensation itself isn't that bad, but the stories that we tell ourselves in connection to that physical sensation, they can be really nasty. And
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And also, like, so when the thought pattern is so used to you, like, so you have it for so many years, that the feeling triggers such a long story in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. People have very intricate stories around uncomfortable emotions. And now, particular, we're talking about, fear of failure, moving into the unknown, doing things that you're not used to doing. We have
Yeah.
all of stories, some unnaturally worse than others, and then we get all caught up in constructive, this constructive feedback loop, and we're unable to get out of this negative thought loop, and then it's very debilitatory. It's
Yeah.
very, very hard for us to enjoy moving out of the comfort zone, because it's so associated with self-protection, having to protect ourselves any kind of failure. And if you're not allowing yourself to fail, then you can't really try. You can't really let yourself go when you try new things, and you're always just trying to go just enough out of your comfort zone that the danger is very small that something will
Yeah.
happen. That'll take you forever to learn. You'll never be a Fred Astaire at that rate. You really have to kind of go out there and be prepared to make a fool of yourself, as it were. To really go out on a limb. And
Yeah.
that's what fun is. That's where life is. Life is lived out on the limb for the most part, but we're so afraid to go there. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you would also say life is lived out of the comfort zone?
well, not entirely. I mean, we don't want to.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Learning processes are out there, and of course our whole life is a series of learning processes, because everything is changing, everything is in flow, everything is impermanent. We are impermanent, conditions are impermanent, other people are impermanent, events are impermanent, objects are impermanent. So we must constantly be in some kind of an adjustment and learning cycle if we wish to to move, to be in flow with the rest of manifestation. So if we're afraid of change, if we're afraid of moving outside of that comfort zone, we're always going to have our defense mechanisms up to a certain degree. And defense mechanisms just obviously are the opposite of openness. And fun and joy and beauty, they're really found in an open condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Openness and ability to, this preparation. Okay, and this belief that I can do it. I can deal with it.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm wondering if you should speak more about the comfort zone right now or in our next talk, because I would love to talk about it, like which are the different areas of the comfort zone, because what you said, like you don't have to go in all areas of your life out of the comfort zone, that might be a little bit too much. And the other question there, which raises up in my head, is like, some people say, oh, but I like my life and it feels good, and like it's nice to be here. Why should I step out like this? And then it's difficult to, not difficult, but then it's like, really, okay, but do we have to go out of the comfort zone? Yeah.
Well, again, everything in life is in in a change process. Nothing is stagnant, nothing is static, really. And so if things are really fine now, that's great, enjoy it. But we can't expect it's not going to stay that way, because things will change.
Yeah.
That's just a simple law of nature. The only thing that always stays the same is the fact that everything always changes. And so if I really am unwilling to step outside of my comfort zone, I'll find that I myself will not be allowing myself to be in the same flow as the rest of the world, of the universe. And at one point, that's going to start pinching.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to always, go all out, like you said. And maybe we'll talk about that comfort zone in our next talk. We don't have to always be going all out, because that might be, there are these extreme athletes and these guys who are really always.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not willing to do that either. You want to spend some time in the comfort zone, to kind of relax and get yourself back, to have a breather and a rest, but always, kind of moving out there and seeing what we can learn. The beauty of being in the learning, outside of the comfort zone, is that we really get to see, or to get to experience uncertainty.
Okay, I think we will really take it for our next talk because I have numerous questions regarding the comfort zone and staying there or leaving it.
That's following our bliss. Following our bliss is scary, I think, because in order to follow our bliss, for the most part, we're going to have to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, let us quickly summarize what we said about inner blockages, and then we will continue on our comfort zone. Like, our inner blockages are very often linked to our set of expectations, you said, like what is expected from us, and often we can break it down to the fear of not being good enough, or the fear of failure, and so it's difficult to go with the flow when we are not open to what's happening, and when we are so busy with fulfilling expectations. And we talked about that it could be very interesting to find out which expectation comes from whom and which period, etc. But it's not that important to change your behavior, change your action and reaction right now in the moment. So that it's more about being open and be making friends with the unpleasant feeling of the fear inside you, and being open to the learning process which comes with trying something new, and also finding out that staying with this emotion is not that hard, very likely. It's more that the stories which are triggered by this emotion are maybe really deeply rooted, and may keep our minds are busy. And that we should use these emotions instead of run away, to use them to be open to or especially constructive feedback, and to be open to a new learning process, and that it will be also new conditioning, but which could be very helpful for the current moment or phase of our life, right? Okay, so thank you so much for this talk, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.